good evening, and welcome to Inside the Rookery Season 7, Episode 13, when we are here to talk about White Dwarf in honor of its upcoming 500th issue anniversary.
Wow.
Welcome to everyone coming from the Ask Me Anything from Warhammer. You're very welcome here inside the Rookery. Please remember to like and subscribe here as well as back over at Lawhammer. Welcome to my guests, Warhammer legend Mark Gibbons, Warhammer legend Andy Law, Warhammer legend Andy Lees, and just general all-round legends.
Getting hot in here.
What I say?
So, we've got, as always, comments and questions pre-submitted from our patrons on our Discord server, and we've got plenty of people already in the comments asking questions. I would like to know, do you have a White Dwarf right close to your sticky paws right now, and what number is it?
Well,
because you stole them all at your side.
The only thing I could find was the best of White Dwarf scenarios from way back in the day with the old 70s logo, and back in the day when Games Workshop had two shops, one in London and one in Manchester. Can you imagine?
Two whole shops.
Whole shops.
It's got great stuff in it though. It's great. The Halls of Tizen Thane, which will be something that the old school RPGers will remember by the amazing Albie Fior. And I've underlined bits in red because I ran this probably for RuneQuest, and I underlined the bits in red that I would have to read out as the GM. So I still have that.
I'm slightly annoyed with myself because I didn't share these pictures online. My closest White Dwarf to hand is the earliest one I could find in our house, which is issue number 131 for £1.50, $3.95 in Australia. No, $3.95 in America, $6.50 in Australia, and 7.80 Deutschmarks in Germany.
Oh, wow.
Just for the record.
Back when Deutschmarks was still a thing.
Yeah.
Now, how guesses in the comments, please? How many shops did they have? 131 issues.
Ooh, I'm gonna guess. I remember 150. I remember Apocalypse 100. So I'm gonna guess 31.
So close. They have 28 whole shops.
Oh, yes, close.
Yes,
that was
Good
close.
job. The reason I'm annoyed with myself is because when we were up in Thurso last November time for Andy's mum and dad's 50th wedding anniversary. 50th, is that right?
Yeah,
50th wedding anniversary. Andy popped into a shop, which I think was where you bought your very first Games Workshop items from. What is that shop called?
Durran's. It's called Durran's. An art shop.
He had all of these copies of you can't really see that, not Games Workshop's White Dwarf, but the first Citadel Compendium, the second Citadel Compendium, the Citadel Journal from spring 1986. So he let us have a look at them. We took loads of pictures. Obviously, I took some pictures. Oh, you can't quite see it, of the Dark Elves, and we all squeed over the old stuff he found in his shop.
Well, my first issue, as you might be able to see them underneath my name in my window, was issue 10. Now that was the first issue that was hot off the presses. The first issue I bought though was issue 2, and the only reason I realized I didn't buy issue 1 was that I had better things to spend my 50p pocket money on, probably like half a dozen minifigs, pig-faced orcs or something like that. Sadly, those issues are long gone. I probably cleared out my collections periodically over the years, and all I can find to hand again was this best of scenarios.
When you said you had better things to spend your pocket money on, I thought you were going to say Pick and Mix from Woolworths.
Also, yeah, I guess I didn't pick up issue 1 because at the time there wasn't enough content that was relevant to my gaming interests in that moment. You know,
I remember the first one I bought with my own money. It wasn't the first one I owned. I don't know what the first one I owned was. But the first one I bought with my own money was from Durran's. So that was an art shop at the very, very north of Scotland, and it was obviously one of the independent retailers that sold Games Workshop. And this is back in the era when Games Workshop were also licensing all manner of different games. So they had a big shelf just full of random gaming goodies for the excitable young chap that I was. And the first one I bought with my own money had a big giant eagle on the front of it. And I remember looking at it going, soaring eagle, which I drew myself 4 times because I was that kind of kid. And that was number 76, which makes number 2 look exceedingly old to me.
Yeah.
So that would be what, 2? So that's 74 issues later. Andy was at the very north of Scotland going, woo, 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 and buying his own version of Games Workshop goodies. I don't remember much of what was in it because I have purposely not gone out to try and reimagine everything and bring it back. I'm just going from my memory. But I do remember the giant eagle because I drew it so many times. That's my abiding memory of that particular way.
Wow.
I've got issue 174 here, and you can see it's our boy Gav Thorpe.
Oh, bless him.
looking amazingly like Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers back in those days.
Give it away now.
I'm expecting Gav to lose because my abiding memory of his battle reports were always him being like, "Oh no, I went horribly wrong."
him and Jervis were, always on the losing end, it seemed.
No, he won.
Oh,
it was Undead against Nordland, and Gav won. So
well, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah,
unexpected.
I do definitely remember Jervis coming a cropper regularly. Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting. I was chatting away with Mark there. I, for a long time, have been absolutely convinced that 127 was my first White Dwarf, which is, it's a landmark one. It's the first Eldar army list with aspect warriors in it. It's got a lovely green dragon on the front cover. But looking back through it, I realized that I found various online archives that have like summaries of what was in them and covers. And I realized I definitely had the issue before, which had all the stuff about Eldar Knights in it, because I remember reading that. And actually, I think it was 2 episodes earlier is when the first concept sketches were for the Aspect Warriors 124, which you got Dark Future. And I was like, oh, I had that one as well. So I think I must have started earlier than I thought. I think maybe the reason 127 is seared into my brain is because I played Eldar and therefore would have looked at that army list again and again and again and again. So it's probably the one I kept getting back out again. Whereas the other
the issues with the because I thought 127 was the one that also had all of Jez's Eldar Aspect Warrior concept.
Does it not?
Pieces in, but it's not. No, that was a few issues earlier.
Oh well, there you go.
But
well,
they were probably in both issues. But that one with Jez's concepts was massive for me because at the time I was desperately trying to get work as an artist at Games Workshop. And I've been sending sketches. I've been doing sketches every couple of months. I'd send something off to John Blanche, and occasionally I'd get replies, but occasionally not. So I thought when the Aspect Warrior pieces came out, I thought, right, I'm going to draw one of them. And instead of sending, and I did a Howling Banshee, and instead of sending it to John, I sent it directly to Jez. Then when I met Jez and John at a games day, John was like, "Why do you send it to Jez? It's got to go through me anyway." But Jez was very encouraging. And that piece ended up actually being published by Games Workshop subsequently. So that was a seriously significant issue for me. Just because it kind of like was a bit of a breakthrough, created a piece of like breakthrough art for me. And
So I want to call out that issue as well, because 127 was also a seminal issue for me, and that's because I thought that's where all the bloody concept art was. So in my brain it is seared in, but that same concept art is, besides Thrud, the art I copied most and looked at most and mulled most out of all of the White Dwarves. I remember particularly some of the Eldar images without the helmets on, and the eyes without any eyeballs or features in them at all. They're just white.
Oh, you know why Jez draws that?
No, I don't. Tell me.
Well,
other than it does, is it because he hates eyes?
No. He says he's drawn, no pun intended, drawn to featureless eyes. And he thinks that he's told me once that that's an indication that you've been abducted by aliens at some point, and you don't know about it. But that's why you don't draw. It's just the image of the alien greys with their just blank eyes. is somehow seared into your subconscious, and every time you draw eyes, you leave them blank as a callback to the time you were abducted by aliens. I'm not sure how happy Jed will be that I shared that piece of information.
Just don't tell him. But for me, I loved that, and it completely changed how I viewed Eldar and elves, and it was really fun. Even when we moved up to say the 8th edition of Warhammer, that's getting called out, particularly because 6th edition, they really went with the alien eyes for many of their elves. And that continued on through to 8th. So it completely changed how I viewed them, how I imaged them, how I wrote about them. And it was seared into my mind. And I am absolutely astonished that the concept art wasn't first in 127.
And if you want a little dose of nostalgia, the link I popped there, again, it's our boy Gav Thorpe. He's featuring heavily in this episode. But on his blog, he's actually got all the entire Eldar army list from 127 scanned in with all the art and the text and all that stuff. And it is great. And I'm like, oh, total nostalgia. But I'm like, but that's right. That's not the article I remember with the concept art.
Crazy.
That was the one from 127.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you a pop quiz. There's going to be a few pop quizzes, just so you know. So pop
Are
quiz.
there prizes? Are there prizes?
Maybe. I've got here in my hands issue number 175. Please, can you tell me what is on the cover and who drew it?
Mark Gibbons. Mark Gibbons drew it.
Marathi?
No. Marathi was never on the cover.
No.
Marathi was on the cover of Inferno.
Mephiston?
No,
that's black and white. They don't put black and white in the cover.
It's
probably Plague Fleet if it's my first one. No,
no. 175 is a bit late, I think, for Plague Fleet. I think, isn't it?
Okay, what's your final guess?
I'm trying to think of the color images Mark did. And that would be about 175. So how many years afterwards? So 1 minute. So 130s is about the 90s. Actually, no, Plague Fleet's pretty close, actually, 175. Plague Fleet's pretty close.
Okay. Mark, have you got a final guess?
Circle of Blood.
Ooh, Circle of Blood?
Orcs.
I just said it's orcs. It's orcs. I saw the color. It's orcs.
It is an orc warlord. You know, that was just by coincidence. I thought I'll just pick one at random and get them to guess the cover artist and the cover art, and that one caught my eye because it was so brightly coloured, and it just so happened to be you, Mark.
Actually,
somebody posted about that. I saw not long ago. Somebody's getting a custom made miniature of that orc, and they said, oh yeah, I'm getting a sculptor to make me a custom Gazgul based on this cover, and I went, is that Gazgul?
I'm not convinced.
Did I paint Gazgul? I never thought I painted Gazgul, but
it doesn't say that. It literally just says in the contents, Orc Warlord. Unspecified Orc Warlord.
I remember it.
But I think it's maybe the iconic imagery that then maybe went on, you know.
Gazgul was already a thing by that point. Yeah, Gazgul was a thing by that point.
But it features the kind of goth kind of imagery, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and it is classic Gazgul, big dagger in one hand, big combo weapon arm.
On some page in that White Dwarf, there is a Gazgul miniature.
Nice.
Which does look
that's not
surprisingly.
That's not Gazgul. That's the standard.
that's just the standard plastic orc.
Yeah. It mentions Gazgul.
Right.
Yeah. Gazgul.
Kev Adams had definitely sculpted at least one Gazgul by that point. So anyway. I'm sure that's what I use as reference.
Nice.
Just as a small aside in that one, because it popped up, particularly when we were discussing some various bits and pieces over on the Lawhammer side. Mark's art popped up multiple times. And there was a couple of comments that I thought were particularly fascinating because it spoke to a certain generation of Warhammer players, where they all said something along the lines of, there's two things that for me really define Warhammer. One is the crazy Baroque over the top. There's Gazgul. The crazy over the top Baroque John Blanchy skull seal bedecked mental imagery, and on the other side the high color, the high contrast, the high humor almost images of Mark Gibbons on his color side, balanced off with the black and white, almost moody by comparison pieces. And they, for me, are Warhammer sitting on the two extremes. And everybody is always afterwards sort of danced between those and never quite landed it in the same way. No one does John Blanche like John Blanche, and no one does Mark Gibbons like Mark Gibbons. And they all try to do their own thing, and very few have managed to actually create a new voice inside Warhammer's art circles. And to a degree, I was left going, yeah, actually. And it's really fascinating to see how one side of Warhammer then moved off and became almost, one could argue, Warcraft. And I'm not saying that someone was responsible for that, but you can see how heavily inspired Warcraft was by Games Workshop, and one particular aspect of Games Workshop's visual iconography. But yeah, just seeing that cover again, it just reeked Warhammer, but a certain version of it. And that's one of the great strengths of Games Workshop and the various artists that they had.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a lot of clear water between Warcraft and Warhammer these days. You wouldn't. I mean, you can see maybe they share a common root, but you wouldn't confuse one for the other anymore. But back in the 80s and early 90s, it was very, very close.
Very close, yeah.
Well, you know, there was shadow meetings.
There was things there.
There was lawsuits threatened.
So I mean, it's not like we used to shout out the catchphrases from the units while playing tabletop Warhammer. So, you know, join the army, they said. They said.
We've answered this one. What was your first White Dwarf? Kilishandra's was 135. Did we answer this one? What's your favorite White Dwarf issue?
Ooh, that's a toughie.
I had mine. Mine is 217.
Oh wow, okay.
Which is the one that came with a free metal Necron on the front of it.
Oh yeah.
And it was like the first kind of. Have you got that one there? Shut the front door. There we go. That's the sausage. And is that also the one, Lindsay, that's got the Necron scenario inside it?
Necrons, terrifying new race for Warhammer 40k.
Yeah. At that point, Andy and I were working together in Games Workshop in Edinburgh, and we were so excited that there was a new race in 40k that hadn't happened for a while. You know, the scenario was like, I think it was like one Necron versus a bunch of Space Marines, and it was like weighted slightly in the Necron's favor.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I know. Marketing. But we set up the scenario that was in White Dwarf and like played it on one of our starter tables, and there was such a buzz of excitement around something totally new, but in classic Warhammer style, not derivative necessarily, but like influenced by other things. Obviously, it was like a sci-fi undead. There were shades of, you know, the Terminator endoskeleton in it. Although, what I will say, for those of you that have similarly fond nostalgic memories of it, do not go back and look at that original Metal Necron miniature, because it does not hold up.
So, welcome to the World Anvil Raiders who've just come in. Today, World Anvil peeps, we are talking about White Dwarf because its 500th issue is upcoming next Friday. It is indeed, that one is the one that also has the scenario in it that Andy and Andy played once upon a teenage time. Maybe they weren't teenagers anymore by then, to be fair.
What year was it?
It doesn't tell you
in the front, actually.
On the spine, sometimes it says on the spine.
It might say on my website, but I've got
it doesn't say on the spine. Yeah. On the spine it says blood for the blood god, skulls for the throne of Khorne, obviously, which is far more important than a date.
It was January 1998.
Oh, okay, no, that's
yeah.
January 1998. Ah, crap.
January
I'm still a teenager. Just wow. I'm 19.
In the one that I was holding up, no, this is a different one. 184. It's got a I think it's Jeff Taylor is the cover.
Yes.
Hero Quest. Yeah. No, Warhammer Quest.
Sorry. Yeah.
Warhammer Quest.
Whose art is this? It's caught my eye.
I would say Des Hanley, I think.
It looks like Des.
Yeah. It's got a little squiggle down in the left-hand corner before they started taking out your signatures, but it's really hard to make out.
Anyway, so my favorite issue, I had to have a wee think in this, but probably I had to look it up just to make sure I was right. It's episode 105. And it is not because the issue was particularly special. It was purely because the Eldar Harlequins got added then. And when I was a kid, I freaking loved the Eldar Harlequins. Because I was that stupid kid that when the idea of getting to paint diamonds and checks and stripes on a miniature came round, did it. And I sat there spending ages. I had a Harlequin army, had that stupid Harlequin jet bike with a big, huge grinning face sitting on top of it. Yeah, totally. I had spent altogether too much time painting those ridiculous miniatures because I was that kid. I adored them, but that was I think White Dwarf number 105 because they were pictured on the front. I have no recollection of what was inside. It was probably a bunch of other unrelated stuff, but because of that,
I can tell you, I've got the website here. It had Chapter Who's article on Land Raider. It had Index Astartes Space Marine Army list. It had background to the Harlequins. It had stuff about Chaos Renegades as well.
Chaos Renegades.
That's all that's in the summary. But
so look at this one. White Dwarf 226 still has the free Eldar Warrior on the front cover.
I think it's a Dark Elder, as I recall.
Yeah.
Is it Dark Elder? It's
third edition because they were in the third edition box, weren't they?
But look what it's got advertised inside.
Oh!
My favorite picture ever. We're at the Vegas years, 1999 calendar. I have 3 copies of that in my house in mint condition.
Man.
If anyone's interested, I've just shared a link to that jet bike Andy and I were talking about.
I think the reason we have multiple copies is maybe I bought one, Andy bought one, you maybe got given one.
I think I got given one when I was down in Nottingham.
Yeah.
But yes, I did, because that's just after Inferno was released. So not long after Inferno was a thing. So that was a big magazine that was released by Black Library. And they were commissioning pieces all over the place, like mad, both written and arty. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I picked one of those up when I was down there. Got given it. There you go, Andy. Oh, thank you very
much. Interesting. Just briefly, 2 different people in the chat have said that issue 116 is the best. So.
Okay, wonder why.
Well, I do know it's got Gene Stealer Cult Army.
Oh, Gene Stealer Cult Army. Oh, yeah. Gene Stealer Cult Army.
It's got the Gene Stealer limousine, the Kit Bash limousine. That's always a fan favorite.
It's got the Thunderhammer and Lightning Claws for Terminators as well. Traitor Terminators.
Dwarf Mountaineers.
Yeah.
Dwarf Mountaineers. Nice. Good shout there, secondhand samurai.
Can someone grab a... Oh, I can do that. So you want the actual photo, the screen? I'll take a photo of the advert in the thing. Is that what you want? I'll put that up in Discord. So,
yeah, we'll pop that up in Discord afterwards.
Yeah, don't distract me right now. Okay, let me find some more questions. So favorite one we've done.
It's funny you mentioned the Thunderhammer and the Lightning Claws because I've just sold the original art for that. And it was commissioned. It was 1989 is the date on it, and it's got code Gene 2. So I thought, oh yeah, it's in the Gene Stealer supplement for Space Hulk. Like, oh no, it's not. No, it's not.
Really?
Chaos Terminators are not in that supplement. So, but perhaps it was created for that project, but it then appeared in White Dwarf initially.
You know what? It wouldn't surprise me. If I recall, it was in Gene Stealer, and it just was somewhat misplaced because I remember not saying it was, I remember looking at
I downloaded the PDF this morning and none of my Chaos Terminators versus regular Terminators is in that
mental
book.
There you go. Where is it then? Is it
it's in White Dwarf and it's in the War Gear book for 2nd edition.
Was it in Deathwing?
No, because Deathwing came before G-Stealer. It wasn't in any of the actual supplements.
But it presumably was in that White Dwarf, that 116.
Yes. Yeah. So that's where it first appeared then.
In which case, the people in our comment chat have excellent taste in art.
Can anyone guess who I'm dressed up as today?
Green? No.
She features in White Dwarf 206. Her miniature is painted.
Ariel?
It's Ariel. She's just wearing a green dress that's exactly the same.
That was weak sauce. I mean, you don't even have the little.
Yeah, exactly. Where are your wings at?
Yeah, really. Where's your big butterfly wings?
Yeah, totally.
Because I like big butterfly wings, and I cannot lie. Come on.
So do you miss non-Games Workshop in White Dwarf?
So I'll take an angle on this one. I would argue that there was never non-Games Workshop in White Dwarf. And by that, I mean, right from the very beginning, White Dwarf was there to support Games Workshop. It was obviously speaking to fantasy as a whole at that point and sci-fi as a whole. And we had at various points, everything from book reviews to other game scenarios for things that weren't necessarily directly located within Games Workshop's, let's say, umbrella of products. But they were all supporting stuff that Games Workshop was selling. They were all supporting stuff that Games Workshop was pretty much related to. After all, Games Workshop was the big licensor of all the great US gaming properties that came over into the UK through Games Workshop. And that meant that all the articles that White Dwarf were spinning were, broadly speaking, supporting their products anyway. What changed was that Games Workshop focused on just the stuff that they made. And by doing that, in turn, over time, White Dwarf turned into just supporting the stuff that Games Workshop made. Now, beyond the fact that this is a really pedantic argument, I mean, super pedantic. So I don't miss that per se, but I did miss it at the time because I was a great games player. And even when I moved into Games Workshop, when it was going through that transition, because when I first arrived with Games Workshop, there was still the occasional roleplay article, there was still the occasional thing that was not directly related to the core products that they became known for through the course of, I'm going to guess, around about around about this 160s onwards, at a guess. I missed it, but simultaneously fully understood what it was. They were supporting the products that they sold at that point. And whilst I really regretted the loss of games like, say, for example, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, anyone out there who knows me will know that I obviously missed that game going out of print. Nevertheless, fully understood and was completely a part of the cult of Games Workshop by that point anyway. Playing miniatures, playing battle games, utterly absorbed by whatever the new thing was that was coming out each month. So thus, for me, for all, yes, I missed it. It wasn't a loss because all that stuff was available anyway.
Yeah. And it's worth noting that the Whiffrip stuff carried on after the rest of the RPG stuff had gone. Because again, as I was going through memory lane today, looking back through older issues, some of the ones I didn't get live, but I went back and got back issues when I subscribed. They did a very clever thing where you subscribed and your bonus was like 6 free back issues, which is obviously just dead stock they've got lying around today. Like they're smart. They're smart. But in that, there was a lot of like all the Marienburg stuff, for instance, it had mostly switched over to, I think, just being entirely Games Workshop produced stuff, but there was still all that Marienburg background for the Whiffrip.
Well, I was just this best of White Dwarf scenarios. I put it. If you look at the back of that, it's when they do those 4 early games, which was the Valley of the Four Winds, of Doctor Who, Apocalypse, and Warlock. So this is when they started making their own content pre Warhammer, I guess. Yeah, pre Warhammer.
Nice.
Is there a place to post clips from Rookery? And
it's okay, I'm on it.
Do miss some of the stories based on Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and White Dwarf. What was that halfling detective called again?
Alphonse. Yeah. There was also what I had entirely forgotten, but again, I must have read them. But like Whiffrip articles turning like characters from the Warhammer novels and short stories in. So like from Zaragoza and things like that, which again, as a kid, like I absolutely adored that. Anything that was taking something that I'd read fictionally and then giving me the capacity to play with that practically. Yeah, I loved it.
If you know, can you please discuss the importance of Dogtanion the RPG to White Dwarf? When Mark arrived, I didn't realize Mark could hear me when he arrived in the bottom of the StreamYard screen that we get before we come into the studio, but I was singing the Dogtanion theme when Mark arrived.
Horrible thing to hear. No reflection on your singing voice at all, but just not what I want to hear on a Saturday morning first thing.
Muskelheims are always ready.
Exactly. So then I sang it again.
Yeah.
Because And next time I play Market Dark Deeds, I'll probably sing it again.
You fiend.
Just as a distraction.
What's the answer to this question then?
I don't
So
know.
I don't know. So
I don't know.
Kevin, I don't actually know this one, and inevitably there's always something that slips through. So if you could tell us over in the Discord, that'd be great, because I want to know this particular one.
Yeah, I've even tried Googling it and I'm not finding very much. So
Hawk Audley says, Dark Deeds, what's that? Well, it's right behind Andy Law right now.
It's always behind me, ready to pull out and say Dark Deeds, which obviously you can pre-order now from Modifius.
Please do. Please.
Do support us by buying our newest
Please.
game, because it's freaking awesome. It's super fun, and we also
Thank
would
you,
like
Hawk
to
Audley.
eat.
Thanks, Hawk.
At some point.
Thanks, Hawk. Super
Oh,
appreciated. Pop in.
legend.
Excellent work. Excellent work.
Beast and Velvet had some cool stuff. It did indeed.
It did. I mean,
So does Dark Deeds.
I'll mirror Andy's comment that I rather enjoyed those articles, and they were popular enough that they all got collated together and put into White Dwarf compilation books at a later point as well, with other articles for fantasy roleplay. So yeah, I rather enjoyed those, but I will admit that when you got a character like, for example, Genevieve, a very famous character from the older books from Games Workshop back when they were publishing them, and in one of the stories she literally crushes granite because she's a vampire, and she's given like strength 64 or whatever it was, and you're just left going, I've got a PC that's stronger than that, and there's no way, there's literally no way I'm having that, or strength 6 or whatever it was. There is no way I'm having that PC crushing granite. Fuck off.
Whereas I felt they did a good job with Filthy Harold. I felt the Filthy Harold write-up was about right, but yeah, because his whole point was that he wasn't incredible. He wasn't a superhero. So
Quite.
So Caravan says, what about the full board games that used to be in White Dwarf's pages? Any favourites? Sanity Clause for me.
I have a favorite. I can't remember which White Dwarf it is in. Perhaps somebody else will be able to find this one out. But I used to quite enjoy these games. There's a variety of them, but my favorite was almost certainly the War Games, the Games Workshop War Games Transplant, that was sort of supporting the Horus Heresy game, which was teleporting up to the battle barge. With apparently Andy liked that too. Teleporting up to the battle
not only
barge.
that, I knew that's what you were going to say, and it was White Dwarf 161. I put it in the chat.
Oh, there we
when you
go.
were
White
talking.
Dwarf number 161. Thank you very much. Yeah, you're calling it, he said. Dropping it. Yeah, it was White Dwarf number 161. Your goal was always to win as the Emperor and get Sanguinius to die at the hands, hopefully, of Horus, which is just the way that it should go. But it was a super fun, somewhat random version of the game. I played it a hell of a lot. And it informed quite a lot of some of my game design choices later. Not necessarily because of its good choices, but often because of its bad and the things that didn't work. But also the fact that things didn't work were sometimes exceedingly fun, and how fun is not necessarily reliant on balanced rules. Sometimes fun is reliant on it being fast and broken. Because a lot of fun was had from that game. So yeah, that by far my favorite game that Games Workshop offered inside the White Dwarf.
So pop quiz. In issue number 225, what rule expansion for Blood Bowl is
225.
included?
Expansion 225. Okay. 225. Included. So wait a minute, that's Blood Bowl 3rd edition time, deep into 3rd edition's release cycle. So
Lizardman?
No.
I'm not sure, but 3rd edition.
No idea.
It was Dungeon Bowl.
The Dungeon Bowl, so because people were calling for it.
Oh right, because I was thinking no, because 3rd edition Dungeon Ball was 1st edition, wasn't it? So or
Second edition.
Second.
Dungeon Bowl box set.
I guess
Elf and Dwarf Dungeon Bowl. Yeah. Somehow
It had
related
the
to the
college teams in
magic.
it.
Yeah, totally. The colleges and magic.
College teams in it, still including Rainbow Wizards.
That says something, doesn't it? How times are changed.
Exactly. Okay. Oh, here's a nice little Skaven boy. Or girl. Hard to say.
Huh, don't remember that one.
It is a Skaven. Well, it's next to the Skaven Warp Hunters.
There you go.
which is from Wartime.
That's why I don't remember it. There we go.
Yes.
I didn't keep
More
up with all the
rules
Wartime
for
art as well.
Wartime, so
Yeah,
give me
quite.
Wasn't there an Armageddon one?
The Armageddon one was in the War Games series. Yes, Battle for Armageddon.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
great. Yeah,
Is that the
absolutely
one
great game.
which you stacked? I think
Yes.
I played that. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
That might have been,
I-
I think that was the first thing I worked on when I joined the studio full time in '92. I did the board. I painted the board for.
Did you do the board for that? There you
Nice.
go. I didn't know you did that board.
Spent about 2 weeks with a stippling brush, just doing all the sand.
I have very, very fond memories of that game because I used to play it weekly
Wow.
for about 2 years, with its expansion as well. But weekly, about every whatever night it was for about 2 years. Good
I-
game.
Was
I-
literally the very first Games Workshop game I ever played
Wow.
Wow.
in Chris Moyer's house.
There you go.
There you go.
Wow,
Yep.
there you go.
I remember
That's going
playing
back.
I think it was the War Master. I think it was the one that was in the White Dwarf. I remember playing that on a train quite a lot. I don't know if maybe that was like going to, sometimes Andy, we would go to cover in other shops. I don't know if it was maybe like going to do that, but I've vivid memories of like setting it up and kind of like playing on the train.
So did you do any of the other boards for those ones, Mark? Like the Craft World one? Was it Ian?
No. Fall of the Elder, was that one?
Doom of the Elder, wasn't it?
Doom of the Elder. No, no, I only did the first one, and then they moved me on. I think I went from that to Plague Fleet.
Ah,
So
Plague Fleet.
when I was first hired, I was doing lots of color stuff, and then just transitioned to
Moved into the army list
quite quickly. Yeah.
Army list.
When the sort of the art, because I joined the studio after the great exodus of artists like Paul Bonner and Adrian Smith and Steve Tappin and Kevin Walker. They'd all gone. So I think they realized quite quickly, oh shit, we're going to need somebody to do lots and lots of black and white art. So that was me and Wayne and John, of course, ended up doing most of that. And then Jeff Taylor came in as a freelance to do loads of the color Warhammer Armies books, particularly, and I guess second edition 40k as well. He did loads of those along with Dave Gallagher. But yeah, it was before I knew it. I was knee deep in pencils and ink. My life is monotone.
I don't know if it's the era of White Dwarfs that ours come from, but a lot of the covers are by Dave Gallagher in the set that I have got here.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was pumping them out. He was banging them out every sort of month. He'd do a new cover for Warhammer Armies or a 40k Codex. So yeah, he was prolific for sure.
Defo.
So Killer Chandra asks, do you like the idea of Grom Brindle adding a real White Dwarf to the various GW games?
Okay, I'll punt on this one. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Games Workshop sort of lost from its earlier era, which was the era that I came into, was the fun and the silliness that often came hand in hand with both their 40k and their Warhammer offerings. And I'm not talking about, say, for example, some crazy pun names from a Nigel Stillman army list. And Incy Wincy, the various Lizardman thing or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual silliness. And to a degree, Grom Brindle, and particularly if we move through the noughties, the various miniatures that were offered almost on a yearly basis by Games Workshop. So that would be, I don't know, the White Dwarf in Blood Bowl, the White Dwarf in 40k wearing the new Primaris armor, or whatever. They added just a touch of fun to the whole thing. And the fact it's just made up and it's cool. And we all enjoy this stuff. And sometimes many people, particularly some 40k fans, are really pole-faced. They're very caught up in the grim, dark aspect of it, forgetting that this stuff was originally a deep satire that was drawn upon all of the cool 60s and 70s shit that the writers at the time really loved, whether it was Dune or Michael Moorcock or whatever else it might be, James Herbert, whatever. All the great science fiction and fantasy writers pulling all their work together, looking at it, and then being somewhat political student-y types going, well, I'm going to write a game that's like this, and it's literally taking the piss out of fascism. And then you see what it slowly becomes when those things that were meant to be pilloried become the heroes. But all of the qualities that they had to begin with are still there, but they're now heroes. And they forget that they are not necessarily the good guys. They are the enforcers of horror because of the horror, but nevertheless a horror show themselves. And that's often forgotten. And things like Grombrindle allowed that touch of silliness to return and for people to take the, let's say, the grim, dark drug that they've been imbibing for some time out of their veins just a little bit, and remember that it's all just made up cool shit by people who really enjoy, getting around a table and kicking living crap out of each other with toy soldiers, and that the fun of that should be reinforced. So Grombrindle kind of did that, and yes, it was mighty stupid, but I still loved it.
So can I clarify your metaphor? Grombrindle is Warhammer methadone.
Sure. Sure.
Put that on a t-shirt.
That's one way of putting it. No, I kind of quite like them. I like some of the models, not necessarily all of them. What I particularly like looking back over a lot of the old White Dwarf models is that they're all of their era. And you see the old ones moving into the medium ones, moving into the late ones. And you can see each era of Games Workshop made manifest by this single living example of what it is to be a Games Workshop model of that time. And I find it quite an interesting thing to see the evolution of the White Dwarf models through that. And I'd argue that they make a better evolution than, say, for example, just looking at Space Marines or just looking at, say, Dwarfs or some other equivalent, because they're drawing from all different parts of the setting. The only thing they could really have done is done one for Dark Future, because that would have been awesome. Because they've done it almost every other game. Had the Blood Bowl one somewhere, good old Blood Bowl Grombrindle. So loosely speaking, fine. I'm cool with it.
Well, yeah, and he's a sort of spokesperson, isn't he? For the he has his own agony aunt page in White Dwarf these days.
Totally. Plus, he was, if you take a look at the miniatures when they moved off to, say, Hero Quest, the classic image of the dwarf that's sat in the front of White Dwarf for pretty much ever was then ported over to be the dwarf in Hero Quest as well when they sculpted up the dwarf there. So, the White Dwarf, he gets about, and he's an iconic image. So I see no reason why you wouldn't want to replicate that everywhere.
Have you drawn him, Mark? Can you recall?
No. No, he only ever really appeared as a sort of a cover or promotional character, and I never got. I was never asked to render him at any point.
I think he. Well, presumably, will he be on the cover of their? No, he was on the cover of issue. I don't know what number that is, but 40 years of White Dwarf.
He's been on a bunch, He's on the new one,
Yeah, 500. He's on the front of that.
Yeah, but he was on in May 2017 in what looks like Space Marine armor.
Yeah, the new one, the new issue, he looks suspiciously like John Blanche on the new issue. I think. I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's an accident.
I thought that too. I looked at it and went,
Yeah.
That is. I'm glad I'm not alone in thinking that. I wonder if that. I do wonder if it's intentional, because I thought it must be.
I don't know.
Yeah, neither do I.
Haven't heard.
No, there you go.
Just catching up on the stream, I've realised the first White Dwarf I ever bought was the same as Andy's with that cool eagle.
Which and the cool eagle. There we go. That one. Yeah.
That Andy.
Yeah, I think it was like £1.10 or something. Because I remember.
I can't think of the cover. I can't think of the eagle.
What number was it, Andy?
It's 76, as I recall. Blue background, white eagle, seen from the side.
Oh, this archive.
I know. I remembered it now. Yeah, I remember it now. It's not Chris Achilles, because he did one. There would always be a lady, a sort of
scantily clad
with the giant eagle if it was a Chris Achilles.
Yeah, with a big huge spear.
There's riders on it, though, isn't there? Somebody sat on its back.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's been an age since I looked at it.
Sorry if I interrupted anyone there when I was talking, but accidentally I'd put you all on mute, and I thought, nobody's talking. Like, why is the stream so quiet? That's like really bad. But it turns out I had just muted you all. Luckily, I realised that because Andy Law is very animated when he talks, so I realised.
I will confirm. There's not one. There's two scantily clad females on that eagle.
And yet it's not a Chris Achilles piece.
I don't think so. It doesn't look it. I don't know who did it. But anyway, that was number 76 for me.
Just a brief detour. Whomever, while it still exists, of course, I'd have to drive 25 miles to get to a game shop that might carry it. But I stopped being interested when they stopped covering Necromunda and Wartime much. Would be more interested in Warpstone. Shall we take a brief nostalgia detour into Warpstone? Were you fond of Warpstone as a publication?
When I was younger, Warpstone was fascinating because I first encountered it not through Warpstone, but through the book that was produced by Hogshead. Because Hogshead Publishing pulled together a bunch of the Warpstone articles, took the best of them, and published it as a book.
Oh, I thought you were talking about actual Warpstone.
No, not actual Warpstone.
I realized there was a publication called
it's a publication called Warpstone.
I missed that completely.
It's a fan magazine for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And it was written by fans, and it was, because of the way it was written, fans by the game as it was at that point, which was first edition. But Warhammer moved on significantly from what first edition offered. So by the time I became aware of the Warpstone magazine and picked it up, I read it and went, this isn't what Warhammer is anymore. It's moved on. You know, where are my Chaos Dwarves, for example, that look like the Chaos Dwarves that good old Mark will know very well, because he drew quite a few of those bad boys. And I was looking at them, none of this matches. So my first introduction to Warpstone was relatively negative, which was utterly unfair because I was judging it by a metric that it wasn't attempting to even come close to matching. It was very much a fanzine for people of the first edition of the game, and I was a fan of Warhammer, which was a far broader umbrella. Then I grew up a bit. And I looked at it for what it was rather than what I expected it to be, and came to appreciate it deeply because there were so many brilliant ideas that had been squirreled away inside those lovely pages. And come near the end of its run, I did a couple of pieces for it, did a few bits of art for it. Did one of a Zolt, did a big vampire piece, did a couple of other black and white images, and pulled on the older style, almost fantasy roleplay one mixed with fighting fantasy style rather than going with something new that looked like current Warhammer, because it just suited the publication. And got a really nice email from John at the end saying, this piece you've done, this one here, it's my favorite since the beginning. And I'm beyond happy to see that coming, because we're intending on finishing it in the next issue or so. I'd like you to do another one for the last ones because these are so great. But I just want to take it aside and say thanks so much, because this is why I was doing it in the first place. And I was like, oh, John, that's super nice of you to say. So yeah, very fond memories of it, and I'm glad I got to contribute to it before it came to a close.
I'm not a big so I've picked up issue number 222. I have to say, I think this is one of the least dynamic covers that we've got in our collection.
Tanks
is tricky, isn't it? Because it is a big slab of metal with fire coming out of one end of it. Sometimes both ends of it.
So I was thinking,
it's hard to engage. Unless you're a real treadhead, it's tough to kind of get excited.
Yeah, inside in Warhammer Magic Revisited, there's like an adorable little cartoon of the wizard fighting.
Oh, I remember that.
The cover. 5th
edition. Yeah, 5th edition Warhammer was famous for this, where it was very cartoony in comparison to what came with 6th. When 6th went grim, everything black and white, dripping with dirt, and the occasional bone / seal / sad face. And the contrast between 5th edition and 6th and spikes, can't forget our spikes, was extraordinary. Because Warhammer completely changed its tone between the editions then. And White Dwarf as well changed its tone, because White Dwarf was relatively cartoony throughout the course of that era. And it just suddenly went pure advert, pure gothic, I suppose, just to use one word. And all the pieces were grim. All the pieces were often gorgeous, but they were so monotone in tone that Warhammer felt less because of it. Because it was all pitched in a single direction.
Here's another one that is basically some witch elves, but they're kind of like in a cheerleader tower.
They see off against the orcs.
Yeah. But yeah, they look like they're cheerleaders. And some cute. some greenskins facing off against some high elves.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously little corner pieces intended to liven up the pages of army books and what have you. Again, Dave Gallagher, I think, was the artist concerned.
Was. And I loved them because they were so characterful and they were super fun. And whilst, yes, they were different than the tone that was necessarily projected by the game, it was more open in terms of being something that others could easily move into. And it was super popular at the time. But I totally understand the tone change. I don't necessarily think it was a bad idea. In many respects, I think it was a good idea. But using it as an overall tone change was, I feel, a mistake. Particularly if you look at what Games Workshop does today, where they may have that tone, but then you go online and you see their Warhammer community posts, which are far more light-hearted, far more amusing often. They're often using cartoons. The art that they will bring out for festive ones are cartoony. Because that's the whole point of it. You're doing it for fun, and those pieces are for fun. If you did that in the way that they did all the way back in, say, 6th edition Warhammer, it would have been like a grim piece of, I don't know, someone's head getting cut off. And you're like, Merry Christmas!
There's a distinction between the lore of the world and the business of playing the games. And playing the games is generally speaking, it's not played with that deathly grim determination. It's meant to be social and lively and fun. So
and if it is being played with that level of grim intensity, you're doing something wrong.
Don't expect to be invited back to the game club.
Get out my tournament.
No decapitating your foes.
There's a picture from a battle report. Look. Adrian threatening Paul.
There you go.
Yeah.
Also, a quick call out to Paul.
Template.
Get well soon, Paul.
Is he not well?
Apparently not.
Oh.
Yeah, so get well soon, Paul.
Yeah.
Can we also take a moment just to celebrate the joy that was battle reports? I absolutely like they were the thing that I think I read and reread the most in White Dwarfs. Like I would go back, and even then, like I genuinely was slightly late to the stream. Like I joined like maybe 5 minutes before instead of the 15 minutes that I meant to, because I started reading an old battle report from, where is it? Oh, I've lost it now. 157, the Battle of Osterwald.
Osterwald.
Yeah, Robin Hughes, Jervis Johnson, and Bill King doing a battle report there. So
God's walking amongst us.
Yeah,
Samuel, you are a god among men. Awesome. Thank you so much. Enormously
on that
appreciated.
Note, Hawk has just snuck in a question loosely timed. Which group of Warhammer fantasy characters would you want to play Dark Deeds with? I don't know.
Play with? Oh, holy crap! And that means I'd have to meet them, and everyone knows that Warhammer characters are the worst.
Yeah, so it's basically which Warhammer characters wouldn't kill you?
Yes, if they lost, yes.
Yeah. It's got to be Marathi the Vegas years, right?
You're asking for a brutal, sticky end.
You're asking to have your blood spilled in a bath. I mean, surely a halfling, surely Alphonse, to go back to our halfling detective, he'd be fun.
Yeah, sure.
He'd be witty and charming, right?
I think I'd want to play it with Gotrek and Felix. Felix would be.
I was going to say Felix, as long as he didn't bring Gotrek with him.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Felix would be really trying, and Gotrek would just flip the table.
Yeah.
Totally.
Or getting
rubbing his
thumb
across his. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yes, interesting one, Hawk. Ultimately, you'd want somebody who was fun at heart, and there's not a lot of characters in Warhammer who are, by their nature, fun at heart and aren't Nurgle.
Yeah. What was the name of the? I think he was a Sinch Chaos champion. The one who everywhere he walked, everything burst into life.
Cold Hellbrass.
The flower guy.
Yeah.
Cold Hellbrass.
Because, you could, have an apple, throw it in the ground, it would turn into an apple tree. You've got an infinite supply of apples, I guess. Snacks are important, guys.
Actually, I'll be all right sitting down playing it with Bugman.
Bugman's an obvious choice.
Flow continuously, so that'll be all right.
Nice.
Joseph Bugman, I guess I would pick him.
That is the winning answer.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's find one. This is are you, Caravan says, are you concerned about rumors that White Dwarf might be going away again due to low sales?
Oh man.
Right. So the general rumor is that they were holding on to White Dwarf so that it reached 500, so they could do the big 500 sale and then presumably make a call as to as and when they're going to wind it down again. Largely because print sales nowadays are not exactly high in comparison to what they may once have been. Largely, we all know that everybody goes online nowadays, and digital things are pretty much the way forward. Will I lament it? Oh, there's a part of me that will be more. I'll be nostalgic for what has been lost rather than necessarily lamenting it. It's not like I go out and buy White Dwarf every month nowadays. So it's not like personally it makes a difference to my life, but nevertheless, there's a part of me that will always be sad to see it go, because 500, the next 500, yay, you can't help but feel that in your soul, particularly if you are someone who at some point in their life collected it or got sent to them for free because they work for Games Workshop, whatever the case may be, or they were working on Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Thanks for the White Dwarf, guys. Whether you're getting it sent for free, or you were buying it monthly, like I was, you can't help but feel a bit sad to see it go because it's a part of your life. And a part of your life is thus coming to an end. And as we all know, this was all fields once. And where did these damned houses come from? Fuck you all. But having said that, though, you know, in this modern era, screw paper. Paper's just dead tree in it. It's no great surprise to see that it eventually moves on. Should it, however, move on rather than be closed? If closing is the plan, I think the answer is yes, because the name has meaning, the name has weight. It could be used. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry, carry on. No.
I was just going to say it could be used for the equivalent of their online adverts, because let's be honest, that's what White Dwarf kind of is and has been for a very long time.
It's what it was. White Dwarf stopped being. I mean, my subscription came to an end, and I didn't renew it. Not because it was a content issue. It was because it couldn't seem to deliver it anywhere near the month it was supposed to get to me. But it's a. The fan service involved in producing a monthly magazine that has been full of, actually, it has been, the amount of ads in there dropped dramatically over recent years, and it has been about articles, it has been about new rules, it has been about short stories and stuff like that. So it has felt like they have tried to provide content that you couldn't get online. So I think the one thing Games Workshop could really benefit from these days is the demonstration they care about their players and the life quality. So continuing White Dwarf in some format, whether it just goes online, whether it becomes give us $5 a month and we'll give you all this great content, I think it is worth keeping that up.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think that we're in a subscription era anyway. So just change the nature of how you're getting the money from it and change the nature of the product. People are more than happy to spend their $5, their $10 or whatever it might be on a monthly basis, because that's the nature of the era we currently live in. So taking advantage of that, to me, seems a no-brainer.
They need to bring back Blanchitsu and Illuminations, though. Come on, show some pretty pictures. What's the matter with you?
Yeah, pretty pictures are super important.
Yep. Just coincidentally, in number 302, Bugman's is in there. Look.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
The brewery is sadly under attack by, of course, Greenskins.
It's a Greenskins.
What else?
Of course it is.
It's Git Guzzler.
Oh,
and
of course,
it's being defended by Durzak Dragonback. So there you go.
Well, we can't lose our Bugmans.
No.
No matter how many X's may be involved, we can't lose our Bugmans.
Do you remember? I don't know, Mark, if the studio got the same thing that we got in retail, but like for a while, your Christmas bonus from Games Workshop was like
big kegs of beer,
of Bugman's beer, like a keg, but like in a cardboard box.
Yeah, I've forgotten about
that. That must have happened in the years when I wasn't working there, because I don't recall ever getting a beer.
That was mid-90s to late 90s.
Yeah,
that happened.
And
it might have been freelance.
As one of the few beer drinkers in our shop, it was great because I made out like a bandit. Well, you don't drink beer. Oh, I'll take it off your hands.
Nice. Yeah. I don't know if did they still do 4X or 6? Sorry, 6X. Do they still do that at Bugman's in Nottingham?
At Bugman's, I don't drink beer, but when I was last at Bugman's, they seem to have lost a lot of the themed stuff, which I thought was a bit sad. But let's be honest, most of the themed stuff was just food with its name changed. But there was still quite a lot of merch and such like there, so I imagine they probably do. That was earlier this year. Last year, pardon me, at the end of last year.
I mean, there's no reason that they couldn't do something for the non-beer drinkers. You couldn't get a cheeky mead or a wine with a label slapped on. I'm sure there's plenty of
There's like loads of them, because at one point I got contacted by Fat Shark, because they were adding a new expansion to support one of the holidays, and they wanted to add tons of wine bottles, and they were like, Andy, you know any wines? And I was like, well, strangely enough, you've contacted the right person. And I sent over not just a write-up for about 15 different wines. I also sent over a bunch of label samples and said, do any one of these, that would all make sense. These are ones that came from this book, this book, this book, this book, and this book. So these are featured here. So if you want to do a little blog article about it, this is what you write. And that went down very well. They took the lot, added a whole bunch of them in, and that was super fun.
Nice.
So we've reached the end of our time. I would like to finish with this beautiful balletic picture of a
Swooping hawk.
Swooping hawk. Oh, that's nice.
It's just like perfect. The way the ribbon comes down, just everything. Loving it.
Invisible winds are absolutely essential.
Lovely.
And because I love the Eldar, and a Howling Banshee, which, let's be blunt, could have done without the boob armor, but we won't hold that against her.
I mean, you're playing the wrong game if you don't want boob armor. Just
not
saying.
On your balletic Eldars. I mean, come on.
Yeah, quite.
So that's today's episode comes to an end. What's up next? That was the end of episode 13. We'll be back next week for episode 14. Wait and find out what we're talking about next week. Until then, thank you so much to our patrons, everyone on our Discord. Please remember to pre-order Dark Deeds. And it is goodbye from me and all of those guys that are here to chat with me. Look at the shiny.
Look at it's so shiny. It reflects the light. It's gorgeous.
It was so tricky to do that. It was so. I won't go into that. It's another conversation for another time.
Until the next time, see you all soon. Goodbye and
Bye.